Special Agent Marshall Turner and the Chicago police are hunting a man for homicide. He's hiding in plain sight. But living as a fugitive is not easy, and Special Agent Turner always gets his man. Manhunt, a new, original audio drama podcast from author Earl Sewell. Now available wherever you listen to podcasts. Hello, and welcome to another edition of A Reader's Paradise. Say, if you like the author interviews and if you like the literature that's being performed for you, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. So, now that the housekeeping stuff is out of the way, well, kind of, sort of, I want you to stay around for the end of this interview so that you can take a listen to Lenny Gray, an audio drama podcast that is being listened to around the globe. So far, the podcast is being listened to in about 29 different countries. So you'll definitely want to stick around if you haven't heard an episode of that show so that you can be introduced to it. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a master storyteller and author by the name of Marc Lacy. Let me give you a little bit of his background. Huntsville, Alabama's own Marc Lacy, a graduate of Alabama A&M University, is a nationally renowned award-winning poet, author, and lecturer. He has performed all over the country at many national literary events and spoken word venues. Marc is also a reputable fiction writer as well as a blogger for Marc Lacy Spoken Word, Music, and Writing fan page on Facebook. Additionally, Lacy is a columnist for luxlifeatl.com. Along with writing and performance, Marc utilizes his wordsmithing talent and poetic flair as he facilitates lectures, conducts workshops, and delivers motivational speeches concerning writing, communications, and self-development. Lacy credits his faith in God and love of family for providing energy he needs to succeed. Again, welcome, Marc Lacy. Marc, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing very well and blessed, brother. How about yourself?
I am doing well and blessed as well. I'm glad to have you on the show, and I'm glad you are here. So, Marc, after that introduction, give us a little bit more about your writing background. Like, how did you get started? How many books you have? Because I'm looking at your CV, and you have a very long CV, my brother. You are doing it to death. So, give the listeners a little bit more of a sense of your work, your titles, and that sort of thing.
Okay. I have been, in the game professionally for 15 years now. Started writing creatively in grade school. All the way up through college, I just really did not have a platform. So in 2004, I became published. I entered the game as a poet and a spoken word artist. And with that said, I gradually segued into fiction writing. I've got 2 poetry books, a book of short stories, and 2 full fiction novels with a third one in the incubator now, of which, of course, those final 3 will be the Whiskey House trilogy. And I also have 7 spoken word CDs and a lecture series. So that makes about 12 published and produced products under AVO Publishing, LLC. Also have done several collaborative projects as well. and written and other literary works from other authors and publishing companies as well, and also contributed to other spoken word CD productions too. So along with that, I have to say that I freelanced in kind of in the background for those 15 years as well, writing blogs for various websites, writing commentaries. I've actually written for a couple of magazines also. So right now, my title is speaker, writer, and producer. So that means I engage in everything speaking, writing, and production-wise. And that keeps me pretty busy on the literary front.
Okay. Now let me ask you this question: is there a favorite genre you like to write in? Because I hear poetry, I hear spoken word, and I hear fiction. So from what you're describing, I'm hearing three different disciplines. Is there one you prefer over the other?
Actually, I had written fiction, flash fiction, before I had gotten into poetry and spoken word. So actually, poetry is natural for me, but my favorite is fiction.
Okay, so poetry comes more naturally, but you really have a preference for fiction. Well, that's wonderful. Now, real quickly, now you say you through AVO Publishing. Now, are you self-published and traditionally published? Did you go the same route I did? Because for me, I started off as a self-published author. Then I got picked up by a traditional publisher, only to find myself back as a published author. But however, the creativity and freedom that I have over the work that I produce is much more liberating than it has been with being under a publisher.
I've actually only been self-published. There was a time in which I had a couple of books shopped around or what have you, but I have always been self-published. I've always gone through steps A to Z to get my work out there through my own publishing company. And although it's tedious, time-consuming, it's very well worth it. And your eyes are on every step. You also have an ear to the ground on every step as well. So you have your eyes and your ears on everything. And when you're doing it from top to bottom or bottom to top, nothing can slip past you.
Well, yeah, it's a business. I mean, it's really a business, that I think, especially new or beginning writers who may be out there listening, because I know I have a number of those who have written into the show. So I always like to ask that of writers because, one thing it's, we are creatives and we enjoy the process of creativity, but also we have to be mindful that this is also a business, and self-publishing really teaches you the business of publishing material and getting it out there. For myself, I started off back in 1999 as a self-published author, and the landscape looked completely different back then than what it does now. Yeah. So can you give us a sense of, how much has the landscape changed from your perspective?
Earl, that is the golden topic I bring up every time I speak about the business of publishing. First, I would like to add this before I go into answering the question. I always try, the authors that I'm mentoring, I always tell them that you definitely have to discern the act or profession of being an author from actually one carrying out the business leg of it. When you're a self-published author, you wear both hats. You're the author, writer, creator, but you're also the proprietor of your business or your imprint. So now, as far as the landscape, yes, you're right. When I entered the game in 2004, self-published authors had two advantages. Number one, a direct connection with the book clubs. And I'm just, speaking from an African-American author standpoint, having that connection with the African-American author book club, African-American book clubs, as well as some of your traditional book clubs, but also a direct connection with your mom and pop bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was the bloodline. However, I'm a disc jockey, and I also saw how mom and pop record stores have been impacted the same way mom and pop bookstores and some major chain bookstores. And I guess what I'm getting at is the advent of digital download.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when digital downloads became prevalent, that closed the doors of a lot of mom and pop bookstores, a lot of mom and pop record stores, and whereas you could count, the handful of authors in this genre or that genre, and us as African American authors, you knew who pretty much all of the African American authors were in the game.
Yeah, you did.
But as time went on, I saw a huge segue from like 2004 to 2007. All of a sudden, all of these mom and pop bookstores were closing down because of the digital downloads and the devices from various websites or what have you. Don't want to call out any names. Don't want to give anybody a free advertisement. But so when that became prevalent, you also had this thing where people felt compelled to bypass some of the critical steps when it came to publishing. If you're going to release something in digits, you can just release a chapter. You don't have to have. Seems like you don't have to have a copyright or an ISBN or editing. You just upload it to a site, pay whatever fee, and bam. Whereas when I got in the game, the emphasis was, okay, if you're going to self-publish, you're going to have to go through all of these steps. You acquire your copyright, acquire your ISBNs, get your editor, website designer, a person to design a logo, so on and so forth, typesetter, blah blah blah. And you go through the whole gamut because the emphasis at the time was on either hardcovers or trade paperback.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now the emphasis is on whatever is convenient to the reader. However, I have to tip my hat to a lot of the book clubs because a lot of them still like a book in their hand, whether it's hardback or trade paperback or what have you. Some like both. However, we're moving into a generation now, in my humble opinion, if it can't be downloaded to a device, it can't be read. So that to me, the turning point was is the digital download age, and thus that transformed the manner in which authors to be approached actually writing a book. Now I'm just doing this. I'm just making this analogy just to do like a comparison and contrast. It's like, just say there were like 5 notable authors like in and around the time where we came into the game. Well, 5 years later, multiply that by 20, and then 5 years after that, 20 after that.
Mm-hmm.
Which, and don't get me wrong, that's a great thing. I'm loving it when people say, "Hey, I got a book in me." But of course, everybody and their mama says, "I got a book in me." Mm-hmm. Everybody's not willing to go through the steps. They basically, some people tell you that because they want you to actually write the book for them.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of people feel that, hey, I can skip this step and I can skip that step, and I really think they're shortchanging themselves. So all of a sudden, that means hundreds of thousands of additional authors each year, especially since we got into this digital age, are on the scene. Now, mind you, some of them are not doing, as far as like from a promotional standpoint, hey, I just got this book in me. I want to get it out. I don't have a budget to pay an editor. I don't want to go through the ISBN acquisition process. I might send the copyright, so on and so forth. But that's it. A lot of people aren't compelled to think about establishing a budget for touring, establishing a budget for, grand promotion, so on and so forth. They just want to get a book out and put it out in electrons. And again, I'm not mad at them. I don't blame them, but the people who are doing that are actually shortchanging themselves. And what happens is, me as a self-published author, a lot of literary agencies, when they see some of these works out there that have not, gone through the editing process, proper typesetting, or ISBN, so on and so forth, then the whole pool of self-published authors get labeled the same way. And, we all get put in the same bucket because, some authors have submitted work and they didn't go through the complete process. And so next thing you know, you got an agency saying, "Hey, we don't accept self-published work." So
yeah. I've even seen some literary folks who tried to give out literary awards for people and their creative genius. However, some of them, are not accepting of work that has been self-published because of, the stigma that may exist, in that regard. But it's interesting, though. I still like the idea that people can get their work, out there and published without having to go through the Big Seven in New York. But I also agree with you in saying that, you really have to go through the process. Writing is more than just, I want to write a book. I've written my book. Now it's ready for the world to see. Writing is a process. Just like, having a business, it's a process, and you cannot hack the process of putting out good work. And the other thing that people have to realize, especially young or new writers, is this is you. This is your brand. This is your name. This is what's being attached to you. This is going to be in digital form, which means, technically it could be out there, 200-300 years after you're gone. And, what do you want it to really say about, you? Do you want a product out there that, is not an easy read, or a product out there that is full of grammatical and typing errors, or whatever the case may be? Because, not everybody's going to give you a pass and say, "Oh, well, they just didn't know, I'll keep reading." Some people will just get very turned off by that and say, this person just did not take the time necessary to put their best effort forward. They looked for a hack or a shortcut to doing something. And that's kind of like the world I think we're living in today, whereas, is it downloadable? Is it in an app form? I don't really have to, if I can just, click a button and get it done, I'm happy to make it simplistic. But, sometimes, you grow during the process of doing something. When you do it, a more traditional way, you grow, you become something greater than someone who just figured out a hack.
Oh, I agree. And if I may add, when you mentioned the age in which we're living, just think about 300 characters or less. We're living in a soundbite age. We're living in an age where the news cycle is like hypersonic speed. We're living in an age in which attention spans are very short. And so these like you have various social media platforms which have certain attributes that reflect the current age in which we're living. Vines and Snapchat and the tweets. So people, to me, have translated that type of era into publishing and publications.
Mm-hmm.
I know folks who they'll put a chapter at a time out on these digital downloading platforms or what have you. And now, mind you, that's their prerogative. And if it's not against the law, by all means, do what you do. But as you mentioned, Earl, your writing, you want your writing. Your writing, especially in this digital age, is going to be around forever. And if it's going to be around forever, you want it to exemplify your sweat equity that you put into it. You gave enough of a care about it that you went through every phase of the process thoroughly. You took your time. You got research done. You got advice from the experts, and you took your time. And your main objective was to release a quality product. And you also, as a writer, now some people just want to get something out there. They don't necessarily want to classify themselves as a writer. Now, to me, a writer, there's a difference between someone who just wants to be an author and then someone who wants to be an author and a writer. A writer is going to always aim to sharpen their skills every time they put the pen to the pad. They want to show their evolution in every literary work going forward. And sometimes it takes, some sharp and some harsh criticism for that to take place. But a writer should want to improve their product, their brand, their body of work every time they put the pen to the pad.
Yeah. And that brings us to my next question about the craft of writing itself, because it is a craft. It is a practice. It is something that you have to, when you're a writer and an author, you really care about the craft and you care about studying the greats and those who came before you or those who are in the game now that are doing, exceptionally well, with the craft. And I like to say that when you sit down to write, there is an argument that you're trying to put forth. There is some kind of societal issue or something like that you are trying to wrestle with and bring a solution to. For example, like we just lost Toni Morrison, a great literary figure in American culture. And like one of her works was The Bluest Eye. And although the work is presented as fiction, it looks at, some of the issues around race and colorism and assimilationism in America for African Americans who have been taught for so long to not like themselves and that sort of thing. And, the book, The Bluest Eye, is about this young black girl who wants to have blue eyes instead of her brown eyes. And so that is what I believe writing should be. If you're going to put something out there, it has to have some sort of something that it's trying to wrestle with, something that it's trying to solve with in our culture and society, not only in American culture and society, but the world. And, all forms of writing, can do that. I know spoken word, some of the stuff I've seen on spoken word. I mean, some of the students who perform some of the work have, come up, dealing with things about, mass police shootings and, the environment. I mean, they're all speaking and writing about things that we as citizens of this planet need to care about. And so I like to say again that when I sit down to write, I am really trying to offer food for thought, and I don't want to sell a stereotype of a particular culture to the world and say that's the full story. There's a wonderful author, a Nigerian author. She did a TED Talk called The Danger of the Single Story. Her name is Chimamanda Adichie Ngozi. I believe I got that right. But anyway, and she talks about when we tell only a stereotype story and magnify that story as if it's the complete story, then we do a disservice to our readers. And it's not that stereotypes are not true, because every culture has their stereotypes. It's just not the complete story that needs to be told. So with that being said, you have a series out called the Whiskey House series, and from what I've read, this seems like a interesting paranormal sort of book. And correct me if I'm not correct, a paranormal book that has some steeping in African American literature or history or folklore. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you are correct. I describe it as, how BBD said hip hop smoothed out on the R&B tip with a pop feel and appeal to it. I think that the Curse of Whiskey House trilogy is it has of course it's as you mentioned, it's based on a stereotype, which stereotypes have some truth to them. and it is peppered with mystery, high action, but also it has a dash of I made up a new word. It's called paranormality,
Okay.
and and it has a dash of that. You know, when you think of like the series True Blood, uh, I think True Blood was instrumental in bringing attention to like this paranormal craze that element that people have within them. Um, it took that series, in my opinion, to I guess boost up several authors who started writing about vampires and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
And I was at a book signing at this store in Atlanta, and I had never seen so many black folks rush to grab a book about some vampires.
Hmm.
And this was in and around the time True Blood was out. So I was wow. And of course, my series has nothing to do with vampires. But as you mentioned, stereotype. It is back to that one point you were making. A single voice should never represent a people, you know, because it's a one perspective. You know, it's like your various news channels, 24 hours news channels. One leans hard right, the other leans hard left, and then one is in the middle, kind of left leaning or what have you. But I am a proponent of people making up their own mind. I'm a proponent of being objective, putting the real stuff out there, but being objective and giving people an opportunity to decide. You remember back in '88 when Spike Lee did School Days.
Hmm.
Some people were sore about those hard stereotypes pulled from experiences at HBCUs, but there, you know, I'm a product of an HBCU, and there's some truth to that. Now he took it to another level to, I mean, kind of to the point to where he felt he had to exploit it for you to get the message that he was trying to send. And so it was based on a stereotype, but I'd seen elements of everything that people were complaining about those movies.
Hmm.
So again, the Whiskey House trilogy pulls from stereotypes, but those stereotypes are tied to a truthful element.
Yes, yes, and so I think that's important for listeners and readers of works of literature to understand, because not only have I seen that here in the States, but in other works by other authors, I've seen some of that too. But they go deeper. They don't just leave it at this thing that just sort of just hangs out there, and you just say, okay, this is just a culture for all people. And I say that also in the sense of being an African American. For those of you who listen around the globe, being an African American, one of the things that happened to our culture as a people, historically, when our ancestors were bought into the chattel slavery system, we were considered one people, not a bunch of different people with different cultures and different ideas from different tribes along the coast of West Africa. What Europeans decided was that you're black, so all black things mean this. And so they changed the narrative. And so some of that narrative, has evolved over the centuries of our experience here in the United States. And it's a system of control to let a certain a group of people say, stay away from this group of people because they are, hypersexualized. They're violent. They sire children and, leave the woman, all of those sorts of things. But again, no one culture has, as far as I know, I haven't run into them yet. No one culture has cornered the market on a pure race or purity and morality. No one race has done that. So with the Whiskey House series, let me ask you this. What was the inspiration for this series? What made you want to write this book?
Well, number one, uh, I cannot stand it when children get impacted by nefarious acts from adults, and the mental state of the child going forward becomes unstable, whereas the adult walks off scot free. And so with Curse of the Whiskey House, I took some stereotypes.
That's a great title, by the way. That's a great title, by the way. I love that title.
Thank you. And so with Curse of the Whiskey House, took stereotypes from the old South and current South and it's a very sensitive subject, and it's about molestation. Everybody, there might be this family reunion, and there's an uncle who everybody knows had touched children inappropriately, but they just let him walk around. They let him walk around scot-free. And meantime, they end up talking about the child, what it's done to the child. And so, and all of these folks that are letting the uncle go scot-free and then talking about the child, they open the church up and close.
Blaming the victim.
Exactly. Blaming the victim. Open, and see, this is like an indirect blaming of the victim. Such and such little boy, he's sweet. But they don't say anything about the uncle who messed with him. Mm-hmm. And so, and these are some of the same folks that open the church up and close the church down. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to play into that stereotype, and basically, because so much of that activity was going on, people weren't doing anything about it. Thus, a curse was formed. And now they really had some trouble.
Like generational curses on a family, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I used, and mind you, I'm not a, I like to write opinion columns, so on and so forth, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. However, when I first heard of generational curses, I thought it was a farce until I started seeing some things. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, this was just passed on. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, okay, do the kids have to do that? But it seems like it just happened.
Yeah, there's some scientific basis to that too. So for example, you have a mother and father, just like I have a mother and father, and genetically, we pull certain traits from both parents. You may have your mother's eyes, you may have your father's build, that sort of thing. That is also transferred over in the DNA and manifests itself in the physical form. Now there is research that suggests that also trauma can get transferred from parent to child in the DNA, in the transferring of DNA. So, and another way to put it, let's say you have a parent who's a gifted pianist. They play the piano real well, but for some reason, when they had children, they didn't raise their children, and their children were raised in another part of the world, let's say. And all of a sudden, if you follow that child 20 years later, suddenly they play the piano just as well as the parent. You follow me? Even though the parent wasn't there to teach them. In other words, that genetic coding got transferred. And so when we talk about these things that are in your book, the Curse of the Whiskey House, that is on that deeper sort of, spiritual level where you're talking about, that sort of, trauma or those sort of things that get transferred and cause, curses. Because I believe that just as there's good in the world, that there is evil in the world. I believe that there are things that we can see and things that we cannot see. And I say that because, for example, I have a dog named Coco. That's my buddy. But, I can take Coco for a walk and Coco sees with her nose. And Coco can go stand in a spot and know that a dog has been there a week ago. Whereas I don't know that. That's not in my sphere of reality. But in Coco's reality, she sees that. And so with that being said, I think there are spheres of reality that, in our current form, we do not see, but can have an influence on us. Now, there's something deep to think about, huh?
That is deep, but it makes sense. It makes every bit of sense because I think we were, as humans, we were made to eventually know things, know everything that we're supposed to know. But everything that we're supposed to know, we're not going to know at one time.
I don't think we could handle it.
Yeah, I don't think we can handle it. And I was telling a friend not too long ago, I was like, heck, it's not a blessing unless you miss it. And the cloud has a silver lining, but you can't see it. And I know those are like kind of colloquialisms, what have you, but there are things that matter, things that are going to impact us, but our five senses can't pick them up. Maybe it takes a special sixth sense, but the five senses at the time cannot pick it up. However, I mean, have you ever been in a situation where it always seems like there's a big blessing that you end up missing? And then it takes an old man in a grocery store to tell son, that was your blessing right there. And like, wow. But I was beginning to think that, hey, if I don't pick it up at that particular time and the time in which I feel I need it, God may feel that I need it at another time. Of course, how he feels, that's his plan, and that's all that matters anyway. But my thing is, if there's a blessing right behind my back and I don't turn around, I'm of the mindset and of the belief that blessing was not meant for me. That blessing was not meant for me. But if I am compelled to turn around and witness it, then that blessing was meant for me.
Yeah, I get it. So let me ask you this question, Mark. Do you have anything that you want to read from The Curse of the Whiskey House?
Sure. I certainly do.
So now let's hear an excerpt from The Curse of the Whiskey House.
Brock wasted no time as he entered the store, grabbed the cart, and immediately dashed up aisle 1. Let me pull this list out. I don't have time to be hauled up in here all night. Shoot, 7:45, a brother's got things to do. As Brock reached into his jacket pocket to pull out his list, he heard a familiar voice. Man, Brock, we got to stop meeting like this, bro. Somebody will think we got something going on. Brock stopped in his tracks, turned around, and was face to face with a grinning Ace, gold tooth sparkling and all. Well, we definitely don't want or need that now, do we, Ace? Well, that depends, Rambo. What you trying to get at? Said Ace with a flirtatious look on his face. Well, I'll tell you exactly what I'm trying to get at, said Brock firmly. I need you to stay away from my woman, please. I mean, what is it about her or the situation that keeps you hanging on? Are you waiting for her or something? Tell me man to man. Well, if you must know, Rambo, yes, I'm waiting on someone, but she's not who I'm waiting on. Suddenly, Brock clenched his fist. A frown came over his face, and he went straight hood with it. Fool, is you crazy? Man, I'll take my Stacey Adams and kick you back there so hard you think that they were implants. You whatever who you are. Is that a threat, Brock? You know, Hiram Bordeaux loves some threats coming from a man of the law. Nah, bruh, it's a promise. And I'll slap the punk off your ass, you whiskey house boy. Wait a minute, Bordeaux? Man, I should have known that was you posting that crap on the city's Facebook page trying to get me fired. Be careful, because you're about to have a punk on your ass. And stop hating, because I use social media networks to express my freedom of speech. Brock felt that his manhood was being tested. He had taken all he was going to take from Ace. Suddenly, as if the moment controlled him like strings tethered to a puppet, Brock then found his hands around Ace's neck and began choking him. This was the last thing Ace thought would happen. And based on his true feelings, he would love nothing more than to tell Brooklyn that Brock was a pansy and that she should leave him. Man, I'll kill you, and I hope that Lucifer is expecting you, because you're about to meet him, said Brock in a vicious tone. Ace began laughing sinisterly as both men staggered around and went straight to the floor, taking down a few bottles of juice with them. Brock never reached for his weapon as he just wanted to rough Ace up and hope he could get away with it. While the two men locked horns, a few fellow grocery shoppers took note of the scuffle and stopped in their tracks, startled. What's funny, fool? I tell you, Rambo, you must have forgot the fact that I was a security guard with hand-to-hand combat training. The struggle continued as Brock is now on his stomach with his hands behind his back. He's breathing heavily, sweating, and half of his mouth is pressed firmly against the dirty linoleum floor. The cleanness of his blue suit existed no more. Ace then slapped Brock's cuffs on him so quickly it looked like a law enforcement demo tape. Then he removed his badge and gun. Ain't talking no more of that tough talk now, Brock, huh? Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I mean Rambo. You have just assaulted a security guard of the law, said Ace facetiously as he thrust all of his weight on Brock's back. Ace's weight combined with Brock's struggling sucked the air and energy right out of Brock in a short period of time. I'm going to get my lawyer. You can't do this to me, yelled the desperate Brock. Surprising as it may sound, I'd do it to your mama too. Ha ha, lawyer. Oh, now you the one sounded like the real criminal that's about to go straight to jail. Ace helped the fatigued and staggering Brock to his feet as customers looked on in astonishment. Everyone assumed that Ace was doing a routine security and therefore no one bothered to intervene. Folks, step back, please. Just continue shopping. We got everything under control, claimed Ace. I'm an officer of the law, a detective with the City of Lazarus Police Department. Someone called the precinct. This man took my cuffs, gun, and stole my badge. Look at the badge. Look at it, please, requesting a gasping Brock. It was hard for anyone to believe Brock while in his plain clothes. Additionally, since he was the one who was handcuffed, natural human inclination would be to assume that Brock himself is the assailant. Many people in the community knew Brock or knew of him. However, in Lazarus, when a black man walked another black man out in handcuffs, people wouldn't know to try to tell them apart unless they really knew them without a doubt. But still, to Brock's surprise, no one called the police or dared to look for his badge on Ace. People assumed Ace represented the law and therefore stayed out of it. Ace then walked the heavily resistant Brock out to his truck at gunpoint, opened one of the rear doors, and a strong scent of marijuana and champa incense emitted throughout the air. He then threw him in the back seat, climbed in, and sped off. Meanwhile, management cleaned up whatever mess was made, and things at the supermarket were back to normal.
Oh, wow, man, that was a great reading, man. How you gonna have the security guard take down the cop? that was something else. Tell us a little bit more about that scene. Before you do that, I also, you brought up an interesting thing in the storyline, that I find interesting, whereas no one got involved in the activity. And there could be, two things, but the thing that stands out in my mind, the perspective that stands out in my mind, is there's a line where you say that when it came to two black people getting involved, unless people really knew the person wasn't a criminal, they weren't going to say anything. And it makes me think about how in American society, the color brown has been criminalized. Whether you're innocent or not, you're a criminal based off of that brown color. But anyway, go on.
Yeah. So okay. So I came up with that scene, and actually, I came up with the entire trilogy because I was posting flash fiction episodes in general on one of my group pages on Facebook, and I would post them every day, and then people would just tune in, bam, bam, bam. They would inbox me, Mark, you hadn't posted the flash fiction. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, okay. So after I did enough segments, I was like, okay, I need to make this into a novel. And then the novel, from the idea of producing a novel, then the idea of producing a trilogy was birthed. And for that particular scene, the whole trilogy seemed to just come to life from that one scene where Ace Honeycutt, one of the assailants in the book, kidnaps Detective Brock Taylor, who is trying to help cure the town of this curse. Ace kidnaps him and takes him to none other than the Hawthorne County Whiskey House. And the rest is Whiskey House history.
All right. I like that. The rest is Whiskey House history. I like that. Well, Marc, we are coming to the end of the show. I want to thank you for being on the show. But before we go, give listeners an opportunity to reach out to you. Let people know where they can find the books, where they can download them, and where they can contact you on social media.
Okay. I have I have three social media, three Facebook pages. You can follow me on Marc Lacy. You can follow me on Marcellus Lacy. And Marc Lacy, by the way, is spelled Marclacy, and Marcellus Marcellus Lacy. And my fan page is Marc Lacy, speaker, writer, and producer. You can email me at info@marclacy.com. My website is www.marclacy.com. You can reach me on Instagram, Marc_Lacy. Same way with Twitter, Marc_Lacy. I respond to all of my DMs and comments and so on and so forth. Products are available at Amazon.com, MarcLacy.com, and pretty much everywhere everywhere digital downloading can take place, period.
And let me ask you this real quick question before you go. I know your stuff is digitally. Is there any chance that readers or listeners can get it audibly? Or is that something that's in the work or something that you're thinking about? Or, have you thought about, doing that on your own?
I've actually thought about doing that on my own. And when I finished the trilogy, which has one more book, and that final book is called The Ghost of Ace Honeycutt. The books are, by the way, Curse of the Whiskey House, Viral Transgressions, which is out now, and The Ghost of Ace Honeycutt. I plan on having the whole trilogy in audio book format in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I plan on getting that done.
All right. Wonderful. Well, Marc, again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on A Reader's Paradise. I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy this interview. And speaking of those folks who enjoy great fiction or great literary performances, stick around after the show so that you can hear an episode of the audio drama Lenny Gray. Until next time, happy reading. I've been listening to the radio, Willie said. They talk a lot about black men going to the war as a way to prove that we are men. They say we got to fight for two victories, one against Hitler and one against Jim Crow. Jim Crow ain't going nowhere. That much I can tell you, Curly said with conviction as he smeared away tears that had formed in the corner of his eyes. Then, why should I go fight for a country that don't treat me like I'm somebody? Why fight for a country that treat me real bad? Willie asked. Again, Curly couldn't think of an answer and felt bad because he couldn't provide Willie with the wisdom that he was asking for. Curly could not give what he did not have. So he said, Because that's just the way it is, son. I wish I had a better answer, but I don't. We ain't got no choice in this life. Things just happen, and as a man, well, You just got to make do the best that you can.